This is not a recruitment podcast. Okay, so welcome back to another episode of Powered by People, the podcast that isn't about recruitment, but it's usually about recruitment. So I am joined by the wonderful Rex Rustin and Ehab. Ehab, introduce yourself.
Okay, so first of all, thank you so much for having me today. So
Very well.
my name is Ehab. I lead the talent acquisition for delivery here in Europe. Been in Berlin for 5 months now, and it's been quite the journey. So my first time actually to live in Europe. I had the chance to work in Egypt, where I'm originally born and raised, and then I moved to Dubai, where I spent like kind of 4 or 5 years before moving to the States. Spending some time in New York, then coming back to Dubai, and now in Germany. So yes, looking forward to when the next adventure will be.
How does, I mean, you've lived and worked in some incredible places. How does Berlin compare?
Well, actually, so far so good. Super diverse. So, like again, the 3 cities where we lived most of our like kind of recent life is basically New York, Dubai, and Berlin.
Yeah,
very diverse.
Yes.
Very like again, everything that you say about like D and I think it's there. So which
that's amazing.
really good. Yes.
Fantastic. Well, I guess London's next.
Yeah,
We've got to add London to your list.
I mean, like again, I used to go like before COVID, of course, like again every year, like again 1 conference or 2. I love the city, though I was like again been hit by a bus multiple times because I've been looking in a different direction. So it took me some time.
The big red app, the red colour isn't quite doing enough. I'm afraid. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we can understand the expectations on the TA function from the higher powers of the C-suite. What's your view on this, Ehab?
Well, actually, it's very interesting, and I think that one of the competences that have been coming over and over again when you talk to HR professionals, generally, not only in talent acquisition, is business acumen, and just understanding the business of the business, what they are expecting, what is really important for them, and how can we make sure that we are adding value to the business. So in my like very recent role, because of the growth trajectory that we're on, and because again Europe is a new region within delivery here, so it is like kind of a year and 3 months kind of old region. So we are growing significantly. So and again, TA plays a significant role when it comes to that. And what's on like again, how can we expedite the hiring of those critical resources who are helping with driving the agenda for the business? So if you think of it, is basically you're bringing the ones who will be delivering on the agenda.
Yeah.
So really understanding this and spending the time in order to understand the expectations of the business. What are you really expecting from me as an HR professional or as a TA professional, and really taking it from there, and like again making sure that you pulse check, am I delivering on your expectations or not? And there anything else that we can do in order to help you and your team deliver on the business agenda? Because I always say that like HR is a service organization, and if you have the service mentality, and like again I am delivering a service, internal service for our internal stakeholders, then you are really like kind of nailing it. So
that's actually so an interesting one. So when you're speaking to C-suite about those topics, their big agendas, how frequently do you need to revisit that to make sure that the agenda hasn't shifted?
Well, actually, like again, in my experience with them, they put their strat plan, like again, a 3-year plan. They put it once, and then they have an annual operating plan. So once they have the annual operating plan there, it is a matter of just how can we achieve this annual operating plan.
Yeah.
So and it's all like kind of it's all about financials. Unless there is like a huge macro changes, then you will come and like again change to this annual operating plan or come and adjust it, and then you look at what are those implications from a people perspective or from an HR perspective on that plan, because even our plans, it needs to stem from the business strategy. So what your business would like to deliver on, and accordingly, what are the solutions that I need to deliver for you in order to be able to
deliver on the plan.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it all starts with the business. I don't see it like changing significantly, unless definitely if there are like, huge like macros or like the pandemic, for example, that no one had a playbook for, or war. Exactly. So then things started to change, but you will need to change immediately with them, because you will need to adjust and adapt accordingly.
So it's a really interesting one, and it's a topic I think I want to talk to more people about, is where you just said about the fact that ultimately talent acquisition is an internal service. And
Yes.
I would love to know where you see the role of TA becoming more of a partnership than a service, and is it mutually exclusive?
Well, actually, I think for us to deliver internal service, we need to be partners. So I don't see them like kind of it's either or. I see that it is basically this partnership is enabling me to deliver a service for the like my internal stakeholders. So let me give you a very simple example. And just yesterday, I was talking with one of my team members. We have a process for talent acquisition. If we are to start hiring new individual, we're expecting that the hiring manager will send me a job description, and I will take this job description, will post it, and so on and so forth. So hiring manager should draft for you the job description. So we're like kind of debating that. It took some time for us to get the job description for the hiring manager, and I said that if I'm new place, what I will do is basically I will, if I didn't get the job description, undraft something and I send it to them, say that, look, this is the job description that I put together, review it and see if this is something that can actually work for you. Because at the end of the day, I would love to bring people through the door, and I don't want these like kind of, small obstacles or setbacks or just like, again, so here, it is this element of partnership.
Yeah.
It is, and it's this partnership for me just to, like, again, deliver this kind of service to them at the end of the day, which is basically getting them the right talent. So
does that change if you've got 70 recs on them?
Well,
like I've been in some projects or with some companies where, each team talent partner has got sort of 30, 40, 50 recs on with 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 different stakeholders and employment managers. And at what point would you say, it's the hiring manager's responsibility and accountability to drive the growth within their business unit?
100%.
And so if you don't want to write up the job description, that's fine. Let me know when you do, and I'll be happy to work with you. I'm absolutely in your corner, but it has to be a fine balance.
And I completely agree with you. And it is a matter of, like, again, the situational judgment is what it comes into play. Like, again, in this case, this was a managing director of one of the markets.
Yeah.
So you like, again, and is new as well to the business. So that, like, again, he might not have the access to previous job descriptions and so on. So there are lots of, like, again, you work like kind of your own judgment actually to the situation, and eventually you will need to balance it out as you correctly mentioned. And the idea is that I would imagine if I did this with this, like, again, hiring manager, he will take this as I went an extra mile, and then just, like, again, he would, like, next time we're working together, probably he will, like, kind of understand that this is not.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because everyone's busy, right? I think for me, when it comes to, like, where the levels of partnering come in, might even be a step before that. So before the point that you get to receiving a requirement from a hiring manager, especially with buzzwords flying around at the moment around operational efficiency.
Yes.
Actually, before we even go to the point that we're taking a job description, let's take a step back. And as a partner rather than a service, do you even need to make this hire? Have we looked at every option to move people from other teams, promote internally? What's the business problem solving? How long is it going for? Have we explored referral networks to the full extent? Basically covering all ground before we actually even need to make another requisition.
100%. And even like, again, building on what you've mentioned, like where I see TA coming into play, it's not when there is a hire is required. It's really when we sit together and do like the workforce plan.
That's just recruitment, isn't it? You know, that's just the recruitment.
100%. But then when you do the workforce plan, and when you complete your succession plan, and then you understand that you have those bench gaps and you will need to actually fill those strategic hires because, again, we don't have someone internally. And the ones that we will need to build, it will take like, quite some time. So you have this like, buy, build and borrow kind of strategy. Then you need to get an understanding of the buy after succession plans. After performance reviews, you identify that there are some people that probably are not performing and will probably need to replace, though you need to get in, like, again, on top of that. We are expanding, we're growing, we're going into new markets. So all of those discussions, talent acquisition needs to be there because, again, you will need to proactively pipeline for that because you will need to look at, do I have the resources now? Do I need to dedicate resources? Do I need to actually prioritize with the business and saying that, look, I have a team of 4 people, whether we need to have extra resources or if not, we need to prioritize actually which roles will bring you the 80% of the impact that you're looking for, and then we deprioritize the 20% and so on and so forth. So all those kind of discussions are the partnership that you're referring to before even we go into the topic of now we agreed, let me deliver for you the service.
Yeah. And then the next is obviously every hiring manager's roles are urgent. So, do they all understand how urgent everyone else's roles are and who's got priority, perhaps in a limited TA team? And in fact, one of the things I've enjoyed seeing in environments is where all of the different hiring managers are actually in like a weekly 15-minute sync, where there's a massive list reviewed of the top priority roles for the TA teams, and there's a bit of accountability, I guess, to sort of think about, okay, whose priority roles are going to be a precedent for this month and next month. But maybe that's more of an issue in sort of hyper-growth environments.
Well, actually, there's always the moment that you can put a dollar sign or a euro sign next to the higher priority. That's the priority. And basically, these are the discussions. And again, when you're talking about talking about C-suite and how can you run the conversation with them. It's all about financials. It's all about top line and bottom line. So the recruitment, if I came and positioned myself is that, I need more resources because I would like to, I would like to meet the hiring needs that you have. I can say that, but as well, I can say that I need 2 more resources to help you hit your GMV or your kind of revenue that you will need to have because it is taking X amount of time. And every day that you're not having these resources, you are losing money. So once you speak their language, you will start to get their attention.
This is great. This really ties into a lot of the work that we do at the Rec Hub with OKRs. Everyone buys in if they understand how your objectives feed into their objectives.
We basically set, I don't know how you work with OKRs, but we work with them in the capacity that we set company annual OKRs, and then each quarter, each team will develop their own OKRs that are built towards achieving the company's annual OKR.
Absolutely.
And it does, like Rex said, it really feeds, it makes everyone feel and creates that unity that we're all aiming towards the same thing, and how no matter how small your part, this working on this part is driving the business in the right direction.
Yes, absolutely. So this is actually what we call it in delivery here, the ABCs. So the A's is basically our aspirations as an organization, and those doesn't change. Those are cutting across all the company. Then you have the big bets, which is basically what every function is doing in order to achieve those aspirations. And then you have big bets. So this is what the big bets.
That's what we.
Awesome. And then you go for like the commitments. So what are the commitments that we will do in order to achieve those big bets? And then you go into
the aspirations.
So
and how often are they reviewed?
So aspirations doesn't change,
Okay,
because those are derived from the strat plan that you have.
Yeah.
Then the commitments may change. The big bets may change from year to another, but not significantly, because again, if I say that employer branding, for example, I'm becoming an employer of choice, this is not a 1 year or a 12-month kind of objective.
It's like a fee.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So this is a PepsiCo kind of. We used to call this PepsiCo.
Yeah. Big. People always get that mixed up. It's supposed to be big, hairy, audacious goal.
Yeah.
But over time, everyone just says big, hairy ass goal.
This is the first time I've heard about it. The big ass goal.
So yes, but the commitments are basically those are the annual things. What are the annually kind of projects or activities that you will do in order to achieve those big bets.
And the commitments then would be what?
A smaller part. So, for example, employer branding, or again, you will say that I will need to build a strategy. I will need to build an annual calendar. I will need to launch 2 campaigns.
So that might be this quarter or this over the next 6 months. These are my commitments towards achieving the big bat of becoming an employer of choice. And becoming an employer of choice would lead to the aspiration of X, whatever that might be.
So it could be basically like your commitments are the same as our key results that would feed into our big bets, that are our objectives.
Yes.
That hopefully feeds into, for us, translating that to Red Cup would be our BHAG of being the most trusted talent partner in Europe.
Amazing.
Which is maybe a less tangible aspiration that doesn't shift.
Yes, but the aspirations actually that we have, for example, are there are some of them are financial aspirations.
Yeah. Okay.
So again, growth, revenue.
So ours is that's a vision that you're talking about.
Yeah.
We don't have aspiration longer than sort of an annual.
We don't have aspirations.
We don't have any. What is it?
We're just all right.
We aim for nothing. We aim for nothing. Yeah. We have aspirations, I promise. But we don't have written down longer than a 12-month annual basis. We don't have sort of aspirational goals. We have a vision as our North Star, and then we set our annual OKRs. But I actually really love that. What would you call that? Not an analogy. What is it? Methodology, ABC.
Well, actually, they just this you mean what would
is ABC? It's an acronym.
Yeah, it's like a process, I guess.
The
ABC goal setting process.
Yes. It's basically we do this on an annual basis. So this is basically the goal setting process that we have.
Okay.
So as I mentioned, we pull from the business strategy, and then we start to drill down, and every function does the same. And to your point, back to the first point, which is basically every individual, no matter how small your role is, you see a connection with
what you're doing and a company's aspirations. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, that whole NASA analogy of the I can't remember. I think some president went to see NASA.
Yeah,
and they asked the caretaker who was mopping up or something, said, "So what do you do here?" And his response was, "I'm sending someone to the moon." And basically, he understood how his role contributed to
His role contributed to putting people on the moon. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Exactly. And this is the beauty of, like, again, when organization can really communicate this to, like, every single front line in the organization, all the way from, like, again, the top management.
Brilliant. You've worked at Johnson & Johnson, PepsiCo, Vodafone, now Delivery Hero. And, for the last 10, 12 years, I've been in sort of TA leadership. What's been sort of either a common thread between, because they're all relatively large organizations.
Yeah.
Are there sort of common threads of management traits that you looked at that, other people listening on the podcast can sort of take as a takeaway, if you like, for what they can impact for their day to day?
Well, actually, like, again, the delivery here experience is quite different. So, like, again, and this is my first experience in a scale up, and the way that scale ups operate is very different than, like, well established MNCs, like, again, the likes of Vodafone and PepsiCo and J&J. So in those organizations, it's a matter of, like, kind of how can we get the process implemented and adopted, and just, like, again, fast as anything, 6 to 12 months. Here, fast is just today, maximum tomorrow. Is
wow.
That's
so funny that you would call Delivery Hero a scale up, because when you live in startup land like we do, anyone over 50 people is a mid-sized business,
established
and
blue chip.
And the likes of sort of Delivery Hero, like, dare we even dream of that scale of enormity? But yeah, I guess they're not a traditional massive multinational that would
not like PepsiCo,
or J&J.
Though they are, like, kind of a good $10 billion business now.
Yes,
like a revenue perspective, but yes. So I think that the thread that I would pull there is that if you would like to really impact the business, is that the first thing is just business acumen, and just, like, this partnership that you and in order to understand those expectations, what do they really expect from you? And every manager will expect something different. Everyone will have a different type of priorities and agendas that they would like to deliver on, and it is about how we understand that and how can we align our programs and projects in order to deliver on that. We've been chatting prior to the podcast and talking about, like, again, how we are, like, kind of we are attuned to, when you come into a new role, into a new organization, you think HR, you think TA, like, again, how I fix the process, how I automate certain things, and so on and so forth. And sometimes you get really dragged into this, or, like, kind of distracted with doing TA the way that you've done TA in other organizations, and forgetting about, like, kind of what is really important for them, or
for this person.
Exactly. Business. For
this team.
Organization. And again, I remember, as I mentioned, one of the managing directors I've been speaking to is that saying that, Ehab, look, I'm an essentialist. So basically, give me, like, again, the few things that will bring the maximum impact. Just again, let's do more on less, which is basically, like, again, it gave me, like, kind of, it was an eye opener. Oh, yes. So it's not about, like, again, what we think is right, but what we can actually do that is really impactful for them.
And every company has different objectives, like we've just talked about, right? You could have a huge organization like PepsiCo, and their objectives may be more around the candidate experience, and they've got lots of fund money, so they don't mind investing lots into making the candidate experience just the best it could possibly be. And then you may have a different organization that, like you say, I need more with less, and then actually, how do we create budget friendly pipelines to ensure that we're delivering on our hiring goals, but without and maybe candidate experience isn't top of the pile, and actually that's not something that we're going to invest massively in, because we just need bums on seats for now. And actually, you take such a good piece of advice, because often when you've been developing yourself in your career, and you're at one company, you move to the next, it's so easy to think that you sort of know, you've sort of learned everything you can in that area, and I'm going to go here and teach them how to do this and reorganize this. But actually, it's taken a minute to stop. What are the priorities of this company, and how can I now impact? Doesn't matter what I did before.
Yeah. Well, actually, I would build on that. It matters, but again, how to utilize this in the context of the new organization that we're at.
Yeah.
How you can just fine tune it and bring whatever is most valuable for this organization and make sure that you focus on that. So you bring the maximum impact and achieve the level of partnership, and they understand that, well, actually, they're not sitting in ivory tower and thinking of things while we are still very early stage. So, and even within those big multinational organizations, again, one stat that I read, that 50% of the Fortune 500 have decentralized talent acquisition functions. So
really,
yes. So the idea is that maybe within even the same organization, in different geographies or different locations, you would find maybe the priorities are different. So so it is as well, again, it's not only from one company to another, even within the same company, when you move from one role to another or from one geography to another, it could be different. So it's always good, even within the same organization, to step back.
What the hell is such good advice. 45% is that of FTSE 100 companies have decentralized TA. 50%. That's crazy.
I'm not super surprised by that stat, but I can appreciate that, you go into a business because of your skill set. So you may think, well, they've got me in here to deliver what I know. But at the same time, you can't go in like a bull in a china shop and break things.
What
I would love to know a bit more about your experience going from an MNC to a place like Delivery Hero, and if you sort of found that now you can recognize that anybody going the other way to an MNC has got to be prepared for a change of pace, because
absolutely,
because I think if you think in different timelines, bearing in mind, I think the biggest company I've ever worked for had about 300 people. The sort of goals of a company like PepsiCo or J&J, they've been around for so long, they're not necessarily sweating the small stuff with a recession here or there, because their sort of way of thinking is 50 years from now, 100 years from now, where are things going to be? And so your timeline for impact is, instead of thinking I need to have a huge impact in maybe the next 12 to 18 months, it's going to be more like, what's my role going to look like here in the next 5 to 10 years plus? But what's been your experience?
You mean moving into
the opposite direction? Yeah. And your advice for anybody going from a scale up to an MNC?
Well, again, expectation setting. So, and again, appreciate there is a difference. Make sure that you are ready for that. It's either way. So moving from MNC or to a scale up, there is, I think one underutilized maybe a skill is just networking skill as well within the organization. So because when you go into an MNC, everything is someone asked the same question before, and there is probably a solution out there. Someone implemented a technology to address that somewhere else, even if you are decentralized.
Yeah.
So the idea is that how can you find those information is just by building your network within the organization and making sure that you talk to the right people, and having being organizational savvy, understanding how to get your things done through other people who might not necessarily have you on their agenda yet. So this is definitely one. Those are because MNCs are huge organizations, so you will find lots of specializations as well. So you will need to spend more time and more effort in knowing who is doing what for every single aspect, versus in maybe smaller organization where people are doing multiple things, or like, again, people taking ownership of things that might not be part of their official responsibility per se.
Wear multiple hats.
Yes, exactly. And then they are running with stuff. Being comfortable as well with, like, again, things may take longer because, again, there is, like, governance. Again, there's state governance, but governance is a little bit different. You might find that you need to talk to someone in global to, like, get
This approved or this signed off.
And the thing is that I think PepsiCo did something very good back in 2018 within TA, where actually they started to pull the resources from the international markets, putting them into the global COE in the US. And the reason why, because prior to that, sometimes we've put or like to develop solutions globally, and then you start to roll them out in the markets, but they don't speak to the market needs, and they are not like kind of locally relevant. And that's why they started to pull resources from the market to make sure that during this like kind of process, even if it's like not co-creation, there are someone who understand those nuances and can bring the voice of the markets into the discussion. So this is something else that people need to like do more often, which is basically making sure that their voices are being heard, even if there are no forums, official forums for that.
Yeah.
So how can you, like, again, building this network, and based on like this network, you can actually voice what my needs in my own market. So if you think of a global product or a global tool that is being implemented, and I'm Finland or I'm Sweden, like one of 170 countries where the organization is operating at PepsiCo, how can I get a share in mind and heart that, again, I get my needs? So the final product that comes is speaking to me. Again, there will always be things that streamlined across, but there will be areas as well that can be adapted. And this is where I have like the opportunity, if that makes sense.
That's amazing advice. And I was speaking to, we actually had a guy, Lewis, from Microsoft on the podcast. And in speaking to him, a lot of the companies we deal with are more startup and scale up, and which means typically smaller TA teams or recruitment teams or people teams. And so a lot of the networking is done outside of the organization, because you want to, part of networking is about improving yourself, increasing your knowledge, identifying core innovations and things like that, right? And just basically boosting your career. So talking to Lewis, actually, there was over 1,000 people in TA in Microsoft.
Yes.
And when we were talking about networking events and things like that, he said, you barely have time to do anything externally because you have to invest, similarly to as you're suggesting, you have to invest your time into networking internally to make sure that you're being heard, your voice is being heard, and for your own personal development and all those types of things. So yeah, it's really interesting to see the change, particularly going from startup scale-ups into more of the M&C world, about how you can look at that networking piece.
And I would always say, just like, again, it's all about personal preferences and ways of working that people are comfortable with as well. Because some people are like, again, no, I would like to have a fast-paced organization where, like, again, I'm included in all the conversations. I'm like, again, I'm experimenting on a daily basis, failing fast, failing forward. So despite the fact that all the MNCs, like, don't get me wrong, they have those like kind of mindset which is basically failing fast and failing forward, but failing fast takes
6 months. Yeah, and you get a luxury. That's a luxury that an MNC provide, isn't it? It's you can try things, and if it doesn't work out this year, that's fine. We'll have another go next year.
But again, it's because of the size.
Yeah.
If you are reflecting on this, if you are an individual who would like to move fast with things, MNCs will not work for you. No, because again, you will not be happy.
You're going to end up frustrated.
Yeah, exactly. Why it's taking
isolated?
And actually, well, that's super fast.
Yeah.
So yes, and on the other hand, if you are super structured, if you are like kind of super specialized, if you would like to get like again everything is in place and it's just like a well-oiled machine and it's just like we're
Responsibilities are
running it
super
and
clear. And
yes, then like again scale ups and stuff
Not
that's
for you.
not for you because then like again I moved from like again we have applicant tracking systems of course now, but like again there are lots of things that we are like again foundations that we're still building that in other organizations they just like again they've done this already like 10 years ago. So and because of the fact of that we are like again as a business in Europe we've been like very decentralized as well, and then we just now trying to leverage synergies and acting as one and so on. So lots of those opportunities we're starting to look at now. And part of it is like, again, business is looking at profitability as well. So how can the business hits profitability this year? And that's why all the different organizations are working on how can we be more efficient, more resilient, more like, again, doing like, again, more on less and supporting the organization to really deliver on this aspect.
That can be one of the benefits of where you've got like obviously multiple brands and you are decentralized. So you could hopefully with that level of separation, it's easier to like leverage each other's strengths and actually find areas of efficiency amongst each other. You can almost like see isolated examples of where things have been given like a chance to develop, and you can find out if it works and try it out in different places.
Yeah, 100%.
I just want to take it back. You talked a little bit earlier about workforce planning.
Yes.
I find that throughout my conversations with TA leaders, this is a really tough thing to get right. Workforce planning as a whole, whether it's the tooling that you're using, whether it's not understanding the business hasn't formally, given you proper budget. What have you got any tips and tricks around how to formulate good workforce plans, or what people can be doing to ensure that they've done everything in their power to create a good workforce plan?
So like again, I think one of the areas where like again HR needs to really develop on is just like the usage of data and analytics and side. So because again you have attrition data, you have business plans, so you understand like again how the business is growing. Believe me or not, business knows exactly how many people that they would like to hire throughout the year. It is a matter of just making sure that you get those data and this input, and you ensure that you work with them and it is back to the partnership. So, and giving them an understanding is that when you share this information with me, like again, even if it's not like 100% accurate, it's just like even if it's 80% accurate, it's better than nothing. So then when they understand that the value of me getting access to this data and understanding like working proactively together on prioritizing roles and so on and speed to hire, and what we call it 0-day hiring, which is basically you have already done everything before like the budget of this role hits, and then you have already a candidate lined up for the position. So all of those like kind of conversations and partnerships can actually help you with the workforce plan, but then you need to add on top of that like historical data to understand like again attrition and how much of that we are going to replace, and all the good conversations as well on succession planning. So it's more of taking all those data points from those different like kind of exercises and then try to formulate something, and then maybe even if you don't have this as a tool, you put those data together, you go to the business saying that our assumption is that it does look like this. Is this accurate or not? And then you start to fine tune and refine. And HR business partners play like again a very big role with that as well. And then when you've been highlighting at the beginning is that in terms of the partnership and how can we need actually to challenge whether we need this role or not. I would imagine in a mature HR organization where you have dedicated HR business partners, this is their role. So their role actually, while they are like, agreeing with the budgets for the headcount that are we going to have, they need to do this like kind of challenge in order to make sure that the final outcome that comes to TA is the final.
Is the close to final as possible.
Exactly, and this is what we will need to work on. And then what TA does, like again, I work, for example, with finance, and I work with the leadership team on, like again, what is our headcount, what it is current headcount, what is our budgeted headcount, where the gap is, how many vacancies do we have, when the people are expected to come. Because again, then you now there's a financial kind of aspect that comes into play.
What's the point that HR business partners have been through all of that, and we have a defined idea of headcount, etc.? Do you think there's space in some organizations for a role called a talent acquisition business partner, potentially filling that gap between defining, working on them on the cadence of hiring, where it's going to happen in the year, locations where perhaps it's going to be easier to hire better talent, that's going to take budget into account, possible strategies around using external sources, things like that, which is maybe separated from like talent acquisition manager?
Well, actually, I always say that a business partner is not just the HR business partner. Everyone is a business partner. So even when I was in my team, they need to run this conversation. So when, for example, we agreed like on the workforce plan. So me, myself, for example, and my team are involved in the discussion once we have the workforce plan finalized with the budget and how many people that we need to hire on a monthly basis, per function, per level and everything. But then once we start like kind of the conversation on hiring itself, we start to discuss, like, again, what is the location strategy for this role? Like, again, and this location strategy needs to be linked to the talent pool that we're looking for and what is the skill set and so on. So it is really a dialogue that we run with the hiring managers, bringing with us data and insights. So we're saying that where you would like to hire in, for example, in Austria, then but like this talent pool doesn't exist in Austria, for example, or is very limited in Austria. So then probably we'll need to look at the German speaking countries. So maybe, like, again, we expand the search into people in Germany, but this means that we need to have a relocation support provided. So all of this is a dialogue, but you cannot really, and again, I'll go back to the data and insights, you cannot really have this informed conversation if you're not bringing the right labor market insights. And you're just like, again, what Gartner used to say is that an order taker, just like, again, go hire for me someone in Austria, like, again, with this background, and you can just run with it without having like kind of this important dialogue, I would say.
Yeah, you need the data to be able to back up your point as to, you know, why, for example, we're going to have much better chances of success if we focus these roles in this location. You can't just rely on empirical experience, and you need to be able to say
absolutely
why.
Well, actually, it's not only to back up my point. I think to even make my point.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
to formulate a point.
Ehab, we as a closing tradition, literally how Stephen Bowlett says it. As a closing tradition,
are we going to get a cease and desist letter?
Yeah, probably. I don't know if you've ever watched the Diary of a CEO podcast.
No,
it's a good one. You should check it out.
Okay.
But they do something similar to this on their podcast. So, as a closing tradition, we ask our previous guests to write a random question for our next guest. Jaime Fernandez was our last guest from Love Honey Group, and his question to you, Ehab, is: what is more important, performance or results? That's a difficult one, I think, because there's you've got, is it without performance do you get results or are they aligned? I don't know. What's your thoughts?
Well, actually, I think that they are like kind of results is a byproduct for performance if you are performing on the right priorities.
Yeah, for sure.
So the idea is that is, and here just like I need to differentiate between effort and effort, putting effort, being busy, and really performance as in like kind of performing.
Yeah.
Because in many instances you can find like an organization very busy. They are like they don't have time. They are like running around, but they are not like again they're not performing.
Yeah.
So I think that they are really linked. If you are putting the right objectives and the right goals, and you're focusing your performance on those goals, eventually you will meet the results that you.
I think that's the key there, is making sure that the right objectives are in place and the right goals are in place. During our podcast with Jaime, we're talking about the link between, or the difference between, do we focus on inputs or outputs? So, if we're looking at it from a specifically hiring perspective, you need to make 10 hires this month.
Yes.
Or is it you need to focus on making 20 screens this month? And which one is going to be potentially driving I suppose the question is linking the 20 screens being performance and the hires being results. And different people are going to be doing different things, right? So one recruiter may be able to make 10 hires from 10 screens, and another 100 screens and one hire.
And here is just like again, whom am I screening? Am I screening the right people or not? And that's the idea, is that how can you make sure that whatever you're performing is really like, again, you are performing in the right direction? Because again, as they call it, if you don't have like, again, a vision, or you don't have like specific direction, you can go anywhere,
Wandering AB.
Yes, exactly. So but in terms of like, again, this I would love to maybe like take something that our new CEO actually mentioned, which is I really liked. It's not necessarily like the performance and the results, but again on the planning and execution, and they are a little bit kind of close to what you are referring to, because what we are used to seeing, like especially in big organizations, you say, let's plan, let's like again have our plan, understand what are we going to do, the actions, and you go and execute, and then you review the learnings and the outcomes, and then you go back to like again refine your plan, and then you execute. His input, which is I found very valid, is that planning and execution are parallel. So you're executing while you're planning, and then it just like kind of they're feeding into each other as you move. So so if you're performing, you just not like, again, you don't do a performance for the whole year and then you realize, oops, I missed the results. No, actually you're performing and you're assessing, am I getting the right results or not? And then you like, again, rectify your performance if needed, and then you see, are you getting the right results or not? So it is basically that they go hand in hand, they go parallel. Because like, again, you shouldn't wait for 20 screens to realize that none of them is good.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I think that's, for me, that's part of performance. So performance is planning and execution is a part of performance. So for me, I always have felt that, like, I would firmly say performance is more important than results, because performance is what you can impact. Performance is all of these things tied in. They equal performance for me, and it's that I'm really trying hard not to avoid a sports cliche, the sports analogy cliche. But I just think
I probably won't get it.
It's that whole thing of like, if you are doing everything right, optimally, you don't need to look at the scoreboard. The score takes care of itself.
Well, actually, I would maybe disagree, because again, you see lots of, we'll see Champions League actually late today. But again, you find teams that they are not performing at all, and then at the end of the game, they get like one header goal,
you win,
and they win. And it just like so the idea is that in like an ideal world, your performance needs to lead to like the scoreboard. Sometimes it doesn't, and this means that there's something wrong that needs to be like kind of realigned. And the idea is that this real time realignment, and that's why actually I think organizations are moving into like, the ongoing performance management rather than like an annual performance management process. Because again, they think is that it's more real time, give feedback, adjust performance to ensure that eventually you realize the results that you would like to realize. So so I don't know, that's just like, again, my 2 cents. Like, again,
amazing.
It's great.
And we will obviously ask you to write a question for our next guest.
Make it difficult. So
yes, make it very difficult. Thanks ever so much for joining and listening along to the Powered by People podcast. Thanks, Ehab, for joining us, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you.
The rise of talent acquisition, and had the same experience like you. People said, if you want to make a career in HR, you start with recruiting, you do this a year or two, and then move in a proper role, like a real role. So
Get a real job.
Get a real job. Yeah.